There's a photograph from 1909 that stops me every time I see it. It's kind of like a speed bump. I need to slow down and take a look. It's a photograph of 66 families standing in the sand dunes just north of Jaffa here in Israel. No buildings, no infrastructure, just sand, determination, vision, and a lottery drawing to divide empty land into what would become Tel Aviv. Within a generation, that lottery became a city. Within 2 generations, a technological powerhouse. Within 3, it became a global innovation hub, punching so far above its weight that the question isn't whether Israel innovates, it's how it innovates. But here's what fascinates me. This wasn't luck. It wasn't even primarily about any sort of resources or geography. We lack both. It was about a very specific understanding of hope. Not as something you feel, but as something you engineer. Welcome back, everyone, to the Anchors of Hope. This is episode 14, sending everyone love and light from Israel. I'm Rabbi Lior Sinai, and today we're going to explore the second of 3 anchors in our framework, Anchors of Hope, and it's Zionism as the transformation of longing into laboratory and actualization. Let's start with what Zionism wasn't or isn't. For nearly 2 millennia, Jewish communities maintained an extraordinary connection to the land of Israel. Every prayer service oriented toward Jerusalem, every Passover concluded with Leshana haba'ah b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. The longing was real, it was profound, and it was unbroken across generations and geographies, locations around the world. But here's the critical question. For most of our history, the longing was, to a certain extent, passive. This is generally speaking. It was hope as waiting for divine intervention, perhaps messianic redemption, external permission. The connection remained emotional and spiritual, but wasn't fully actualized. Zionism represented a radical break. That's political Zionism, modern Zionism, the decision to transform passive hope into active agency. Not to wait for redemption, but to participate in it. Not to long for return, but to execute it, to actually make it happen. Theodor Herzl captured this in a single sentence in his Der Judenstaat, the Jewish State, in 1896, with the quote, "If you will it, it is no dream." Not if you wish it or if you pray for it, but if you will it. If you apply agency, strategy, and systematic effort, anything can happen. This wasn't just a philosophical understanding, it was operational. It was an action plan. Herzl wrote this manifesto in 1896, and by 1897, in the first World Zionist Congress convened in Basel, by 1901, they had launched the Keren Kayemet LiYisrael, the Jewish National Fund, was a fund for funds to be raised to purchase land. By 1909, those same families I mentioned earlier were standing by those sand dunes. From abstract concept to concrete action in 13 years. That's not a timeline of passive hope. That's the timeline of innovation. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a metrics perspective. There is an opportunity here to measure impact because Zionism didn't just build the state, it engineered an innovative ecosystem that demonstrates measurable outcomes of active hope. Consider this data. Israel represents something like 0.1 or 0.2% of the world's population, but produces 20% of the world's Nobel Prize winners per capita. It has more startups per capita than any nation on earth, one for every 1,400 people globally. More companies listed on NASDAQ than any other country outside of North America. The highest concentration of engineers and scientists globally. That's here in Israel. So the question is why? And the standard answers point generally to military service, creating technical skills, or necessity that drives invention, or perhaps Jewish cultural emphasis and values on education. All are true, but still insufficient. And the real answer lies in understanding innovation not just as invention, but as the systematic transformation of constraint into opportunity, potential, realized. And that transformation requires a very specific mindset. It's a way of life. It's a way of understanding and thinking about the world and life surrounding you. The belief that your agency can change your circumstances. We do have choices to make and action to take. And that is active hope. The early Zionist pioneers faced impossible constraints. We've learned about this. Hostile environments, limited resources. We all know what this land looks like, 60% of which is desert. International opposition and boycotts, existential threats. And the early pioneers, or our ancestors, they could have framed these reasons as why the dream was, impossible. Instead, they framed them as, to a certain extent, design parameters. How can we achieve our objective, our outcome? How can we return home? How can we bring water to the desert? Well, how do we bring water to the desert? We developed the drip irrigation that revolutionized global agriculture. The need to defend scattered settlements. We innovate the kibbutz model that combines collective living and strategic positioning. Need economic development without any natural resources? Well, human capital through universal education and research investment. So what happens is that every constraint, every challenge became, to a certain extent, a laboratory. Every problem became a prototype. And that's not just optimism, that's systematic hope architecture. It's a framework. And this brings us to what I call the assemblance of innovation, the way Zionist thinking created interlocking systems that reinforce active hope across generations. Think about Israel's approach to technology development. It's not accidental or organic. It's deliberately designed. Military service creates technical training and problem solving under pressure. University partnerships with defense industries ensure research has immediate application. Government programs provide seed venture capital. Immigration policies recruit global talent. Cultural acceptance of failure as learning rather than shame enables risk-taking. Each element reinforces the others. The system doesn't just tolerate innovation, it requires it. We need it. It doesn't just hope for a breakthrough, it engineers the conditions where breakthroughs become probable, where ideas become true, where we make ideas happen. I see this day in and day out ever since my aliyah to Israel. 15 years ago we made aliyah, moved here from New York to Israel. And the default assumption isn't this might work or can it work? It's how do we make this work? It's not should we try, but what does the version of success actually look like? How do we make this happen? And that is active hope institutionalized. That's the Zionist framework applied not just to state building, but to problem solving as cultural practice. And here's what's crucial. This approach is transmissible. It's not dependent on charismatic leadership or unique historical moments. It's embedded in educational systems, in organizational structures, and in expectations, in social expectations. It becomes inherited practice rather than individual inspiration. That's what makes innovation, Zionist innovation, an anchor. It's what holds generations throughout time, throughout history, precisely because it's systematic rather than sentimental. Now, I just want to be clear real quick. Acknowledging Zionism as innovation, as a framework of innovation, doesn't mean ignoring that it is complex or that there are conflicts. Active hope applied to one's community's dreams perhaps does intersect with other communities' realities. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we know that it can demonstrate painful truths, that agency for some can feel like constraint for others, or the haves and the have-nots. But here's what the innovation lens can teach us. The same framework that transformed sand dunes into startups can transform conflict into coexistence, living together, or even help others realize their dreams, if perhaps similar principles were applied. Innovation thinking requires us to ask, what are the constraints? What outcomes do we actually want? Can we achieve? What systematic approaches makes those outcomes probable? For Jewish communities globally, especially after October 7th, the Zionism as innovation model offers crucial guidance. First principle, number one, agency over anxiety. When anti-Semitism rises, the question isn't just how do we defend the Jews, but how do we build not just protection, but contribution, not just reaction, but being proactive? The second principle, systematic over sentimental. Don't just rely on inspiration. Design structures. Create a long-term strategic plan, educational programs, leadership pipelines, institutional partnerships that make resilience reproducible. Third principle, iteration over perfection. The startup model accepts failure as data. We learn from this. Community resilience requires the same willingness to experiment, to assess, and of course to adapt. We've got to continue moving forward. Can't look backwards. Can't feel bad for ourselves. We've got to be proactive. This is the Zionist contribution to Jewish resilience thinking. The demonstration that hope works best when treated as a verb, as active. When we stop waiting for circumstances to improve or hope that they'll improve, and we actually start to engineer the conditions for improvement. So, friends out there, here's my challenge as we close. Take one area you are experiencing passive hope, where you might be waiting for something to change, to improve, or to resolve itself. Apply the innovative question, what active agency might look like in my situation? Not what do you wish would happen, not what you hope someone else will do, but what systematic approach could you yourself design to make the desired outcome more probable? Because that's the anchor Zionism provides, the empirical proof that active hope generates measurable results. The transformation from dream to data to reality is possible when we apply agency, strategy, and systematic effort. Those 66 families in the sand dunes became a nation that led the world in innovation per capita, not because they waited for permission or the right conditions, but because they understood that hope without strategy is just longing, while hope with agency becomes history. It's like friends of mine out there and people out there who really want to come and visit Israel, but it's not the right time. Well, when is the right time? Make it happen. Buy that flight, buy that ticket, put it on your calendar and come. Now is the right time. Make it happen. And so the next time you come about a challenge you face, don't just sit around waiting for things to change or get better on their own. Be an active participant in making that happen. I want to thank you all for joining me on this episode at Anchors of Hope. I want to thank you for sharing your feedback. And I want to thank you for sharing these episodes with your circle of friends and your network. Perhaps there's something to learn for each and every one of us in these conversations. Sending all love and light from Israel. And remember, Am Yisrael Chai, it's not just a slogan, It's a way of life. I'm Rabbi Leroy Sinai, thanking you for anchoring with me. Till next time.